Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the simple workforce management software for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Andrew Fishwick, CEO of Hestia, an all-round bundle of positive energy. Coming up on today's show, Andrew showcases his growth.
I'm allowed to carry my sword unsheathed through the city.
More hard-hitting journalism from Phil. How did the sheep thing come about? And Andy recalls a particularly troublesome period.
I've got that date tattooed on my arse somewhere, I think.
All that and so much more as I invited Andrew back to the show, as I wanted to learn why his new company Hestia are backing hospitality when all else seemed reluctant to. And he doesn't disappoint, as time spent with Andrew is always high on fun and energy, and he brings his A-game on stories as well. So please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I hope you enjoy. And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome back to none other than Andrew Fishwick. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
I've been super excited about this because, as we were just talking about before we switched the microphone on, there was a story from your previous journey, episode 68, I think it was, which has transcended the industry. I've had mates come up to me and they said they were killing themselves with laughter over this concept of you having 100 grand's worth of cash in your bags whilst having a pint on the way to cashing in.
Yeah, we should give some context, by the way, for that. That wasn't my 100 grand. Yeah. This was, that was a story I told last time when we chatted. When I was a young barman at Pitcher and Piano in Liverpool Street in the late 90s, mid-90s. And we used to have to go, and it was all cash, obviously. We only had a tiny safe, and you couldn't fit all the cash that bar was taking. They did about 100 grand a week in 1996 or something. It was only open Monday to Friday. We had our weekends off. It was the best bar job ever. We used to take the money up to the post office in Houndsditch round the corner, but we used to take it in 2 rucksacks, me and the head barman, and we used to stop for a pint on the way, which I never quite understood why we wouldn't stop for a pint on the way back after we dropped. And I say it's one of those stories that now gives me heart palpitations as an operator and owner thinking about it. I mean, absolutely awful. Yeah. But as a 19-year-old, I had no idea, so it was fine.
Anybody coming within sort of 5 yards of the table, you're like, get away, get away.
No, I don't think we just shoved them under the table. I mean, we were so laissez-faire about the whole thing. Horrendous.
Yeah. Well, as we said, the good/bad old days, whatever.
Good/bad old days.
Whatever your perception is of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, how's life? What's new?
It's not bad at the moment, actually. You've caught me at not a bad time.
Good.
Yeah, we were sort of mid-COVID, weren't we, when we first chatted? End of one of the lockdowns or something.
Yeah, indeed, yes. Lockdown, whatever tier you were
Lockdown
in.
57 or whatever we were on at that point.
That's right. Yeah. That little cold that was supposed to last for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. We all thought we'd be back to work by the next weekend.
Mm.
No, it has been. It's been a post-COVID roller coaster in a mainly a good way, I think. So not bad is how you find me.
Yeah, and I think this was one of the reasons why I was super keen to get you back on. Notwithstanding, you are of course an amazing guest, and conversation with you is always easy. So I'm just going to sit back here and let you do the work. But actually, the thing that the reason why I really wanted to get you back was actually this, which we'll come on to in a great deal of depth, I'm sure. But is what you're doing now, and having founded this company called Hestia PLC.
Yeah.
And I just remember reading, especially in a time where we're in right now, where everybody's like, there's doom and gloom everywhere. Hospitality is a tough business to go into and all that. And yet, in the face of all of that, you've effectively, what it looks like from the outside looking in is that you've founded a business that is investing in hospitality. And so, one, I wanted to explore why.
Yeah.
When everybody else is saying, don't do it.
Yeah.
But two, in itself, it sounds really interesting, and obviously it's part of the follow-on journey from what we've kind of already covered.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is really interesting because Effectively, probably the time that we first chatted on this podcast was about the time that the idea for Hestia was born. And it was coming out of COVID. I was being asked by loads of mates in the industry, mainly for the princely invoice sum of one beer, or sometimes, if I was lucky, one lunch, to have a look at where they were at. And there was a really similar story happening across everyone. And lots of the listeners will have had exactly the same story. So this is not new news for a lot of people. But there were a couple of sort of narrative strands that were running through the chats I was having. And they were mainly things like the balance sheet was absolutely buggered. I mean, because everyone took C-bill loan, bounce back loans, so just to get through. And we all had to do that. Everyone had to. That wasn't a bad thing. That wasn't reckless borrowing or anything. We would not, any of us, be stood here unless across any of our businesses had to look at how to survive. We were all in survival mode, weren't we? I mean, we didn't know how long this thing was going to last. We didn't know what it was going to look like. We had to do anything. And, I think we all took the view that if we didn't do that, or if we did that and we got it wrong, who's going to hold us? I mean, we were, what the hell? If the whole world went to hell in a handcart, then none of it mattered anyway.
Well, I mean, and as you said, no choice, right? You do that or you're fooled.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the first ever government-mandated shutdown of hospitality. We had it wasn't like we were all sat in a room going, aren't we? How does anyone feel about this? Yeah. So there was the theme of buggered balance sheets was definitely there. But what was
sounds really, like a podcast.
Yeah, maybe cut that bit out. No. But what was really interesting, and the bit that sparked the old grey cells starting to flutter in my tiny brain, was good operators, the operators I loved and respected in our world, were starting to look to the future and say, actually, I think now's the time to go. I think now is a great time. And I was of a similar opinion. They were saying things like, and we were experiencing it across the businesses I was chairing at the time, landlord deals were amazing. They were back. There was no premiums. People were shutting. So there were sites available. There was starting to be the influx of good operators making themselves a point of differentiation for recruitment. So staffing for good operators, huge caveat there. For good operators, staffing was less of a problem than it had been. For bad operators, it will always be a problem, and that's perfectly fine. Totally. Another thing that makes me unpopular, but yes.
But I agree with you. I mean, this is, we've been talking about staffing issues until the cows.
Yeah.
Cows come home. Is that the phrase? Where does that even come from? But we can all probably agree that it's the same principle as anything in the world. If you do something well, then you'll win. You'll win in the end. If you're doing something badly, you get found out.
You get found out, absolutely. And these days, staff don't take long to discern whether you're a good operator or not. They're very canny, very, very canny.
Yeah.
And the third bit of this strand of narrative was that there was huge pent up demand. When we all got out of this, we all realised the value of hospitality in our lives, whether you're an operator or just a general punter. We all valued sitting around a table with our friends again, whether it's a pub or a restaurant or whatever it was. And we were seeing again, coming out of lockdown, you couldn't get a bloody table anywhere you wanted in London. No, it was full. It was absolutely full. And that was just with us. That was before the tourists started coming back, which they are now back in droves, which is brilliant. Now, and we were also seeing this change of work pattern where, we're both of us sat here today on a Friday morning in our homes. We are not in offices in town anywhere. And we were seeing that change in working pattern, which was massively helping the regional operators. I mean, by regional, I mean anywhere out of Zone 1 in central London. I bet if I walked up the road to Hampstead today, it's absolutely rammed up there on Friday lunchtime, whereas it wouldn't have been 5 years ago because they'd have all been in the city. So I think, those strands, I thought, were leading me towards a very, very bullish view on the market of hospitality. Now, that then coincided with a couple of things. I've whittled on for years that private equity didn't understand hospitality and it was the wrong model for private equity. And I believed that in my heart because I've seen it and I've actually done it. I did it once. I worked for a private equity firm that bought, am I allowed to say? Yeah, I probably am. That bought Byron Burger back in the day. And it was a broken model, They bought it for 100 million quid. They lumped 100 million quid worth of Luxembourg debt on the thing. And then, unsurprisingly, it didn't work. And Byron went bust many times. Yeah, you may have heard about it. So I've always thought that the private equity model, I mean, it kind of works. It kind of works for QSR. It kind of works for fast food. I get it, because then it is just a numbers game. How many KFCs can we roll out? How many Burger Kings can we do? I kind of get it.
Yeah. But that's probably because that's a very transactional business, right? And in the end, there is a bit of hospitality, but actually it's about, just getting people through the door and getting the next batch in.
Yeah, I mean, with not being too disparaging, because those boys and girls make more money than I ever will. It is you could run it with an algorithm, sort of. It is sort of an algorithmic business. You need to, it's a numbers game in that way.
Hmm.
And I've always thought where the rubber hits the road for the private equity and hospitality business is when there is that. You're very right as ever. Where there is that hospitality and where's that human element to it. And I've always thought that it was a broken model for anything sort of in the premium sector, certainly, and probably even the casual dining sector. It's a very, very hard model for private equity to get their head around, and that's for a number of reasons. And we haven't got long enough on this podcast, but their
That's probably too
investment
boring for
horizon.
this podcast anyway. So
Yeah, fine. Their investment horizons are quite small, 3 to 5 years. That's not really long enough to build anything meaningful. If you try and churn out, Jeremy King once told me a brilliant story. I'll share this. I'm sure he won't mind. Of one of his investors back in the day for Corbin and King. Questioned whether he should buy those lovely silver teapots they had at the Wolseley, because you can buy much, much cheaper teapots than them. and Jeremy always said that was sort of the essence of private equity trying to do hospitality. Yeah, you definitely can buy cheaper teapots than Jeremy used to buy for the Wolseley. But the reason everyone went to the Wolseley was because of the lovely silver teapot. It felt just beautiful in your hand pouring that tea out.
Yeah. Can you imagine if that was a stainless steel teapot?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Could you go to IKEA and buy a cheaper one? You definitely could.
Yeah.
Would anyone come? No.
But even as a consumer, and I don't know enough about the private equity space to truly comment, but just from a consumer's perspective, the one that I always kind of has annoyed me until, for as long as I can remember, was Harry Ramsden's.
Yeah.
Do you remember Harry Ramsden's?
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, and maybe it's because I've got such fond nostalgic memories of going to a Harry Ramsden's in Glasgow, with the white tablecloths and the classic waiter and waitress outfits and white gloves and silver, proper silverware and proper chandeliers and all of that, and then having a fish supper basically.
Yeah, fish supper.
And just thought this is amazing. And then private equity bought it because it was successful.
Yeah,
and totally ripped the heart out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been wittering on at that story for years, and then the final bit of this of all these sort of ideas that were swirling around my head at the time was that because of COVID, there had been no M&A, there'd been no merger and acquisition deals really in our sector for 3 or 4 years. So that meant that not only would the natural cycle of businesses that might have come to market had just stopped, but also the businesses that had been bought by private equity in 2017, 18, 19, who would normally have come to market as well, because private equity can't think more than 3 to 5 years. Their algorithm breaks after that point. So I thought there's going to be this huge bottleneck of possible acquisitions coming to market that had been blocked. So I thought this is going to be the best time ever. There's going to be loads of businesses that want to sell, not fire sale, not troubled businesses, although some of them might be, but just by the natural order of things, there's going to be more opportunity to acquire really good businesses. And therefore, the price of them is going to be it's not going to be, 10x EBITDA. It's going to be a more reasonable price that you can start to actually operate and make money from. So that all of those seemingly disparate ideas swirling around my head were really the start of what became Hestia. That was how it all sort of came about. Because I thought if we could build a group of people who could go and acquire premium hospitality brands and operate them, this might be the time to do it.
Yeah, interesting. And where do you think is your mentality towards that just basically logical thinking as you would kind of think about things? Because if in that time you were to believe everything you would see in mainstream media and all of that kind of thing, that with rising costs, staffing costs, cost, like a bad time to invest. So do you think you're just geared up in a way that says, like, well, if that's what everybody else is thinking, then maybe I'm going to explore this thing and see if there's legs to it?
Yeah, I think I do have that, what's that line, when everyone else zigs, you should zag kind of mentality slightly. But I actually think, I always argue, especially to my wife, that I am deeply logical and everything I do is based on pure common sense. Never wins, but I think there was a lot of it there was a lot of it that was my lived reality. I go out and I eat and I talk to people who eat, and I'm around the restaurant scene all the time. And whilst everyone was saying no one can afford to go out, I was looking at full dining rooms going, that's not true. That might be what the Daily Mail is saying, but the lived reality of that is this place is rammed and absolutely heaving on a Thursday night, wherever I was. So I thought there was a real disconnect. And I think that's a really interesting point of narrative on this story, is that sometimes you just need to go out. Sometimes you just need to see these things. It's like when a broker tells you this site's got great footfall, go and sit and have a coffee opposite the site for an hour or two. You don't need a clicker, but just kind of look at it and think, does this site have great footfall? I think people get too stuck behind their desks sometimes to go out and find out whether just because you read it in the mail it's right or not. You've got to go and sit there sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I wouldn't believe the date in the Daily Mail anyway, right? I mean, that's
exactly. Yeah.
I've always.
I use that as a deliberate example.
Yeah. I think that was a Jim Davidson that came up with that. Or I'm not sure I can even mention his name these days.
I was going to say we're both cancelled now. Thanks for
that. I'll cut that out. Don't worry. Yeah, well, look, I suppose this is one of the things for me why I was really excited to get you back on, was because this is just a really positive message. Like, it's not a case of believe what you hear in the news. It's almost a case of go out and make your own news, really. And
exactly that. Yeah, and I'm a big believer in that. And I think now, listen, is it opportunistic of me to be doing this? Maybe slightly, and because someone's selling their business, does that mean that they're not? I don't really believe that. I think in what I'm trying to do, and one of our points of differentiation from private equity, is that we want to work with chefs and operators. We're not buying assets in order to strip them or to flog them cheap. We want to grow things, and I think that's the positivity of this, is that we want to. If we're buying your restaurant group that you've built with your own hands for 10 years. And you want to stay in this business, we want to have you. We're not trying to rip out management teams. Sometimes we're buying things and people want to get out because they've had enough and they've been doing it for 20 years and they're tired and they want to go and retire and play golf and whatever it is people do when they retire. I doubt I'll ever live long enough to find that out. But if I do, that would be
eating out every night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's fine if that's what was wanted, but often it's a classic old cliche of you invest in people and you buy management teams, but we genuinely are like that's genuinely what we're doing. And as much as we're looking obviously at the EBITDA and the sales to salaries ratios and all the metrics you might think someone looks at when they're buying a business, we're also sitting down having a lot of lunches with management teams and finding out what they want to do, because they tend to know better than anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And a really, really great point to make. Then it's just flown in one side and gone out the other. But but actually,
to keep the ideas in.
That's right. I actually kind of remember this. This kind of speaks to a little bit. We spoke about this in the last chat that we had, which was kind of creating a win-win scenario, right? And it's just all about understanding what the win is for the other side of the, and as you say, the win for the other side might be, do you know what? I've had enough. I just need to get rid of this business out of my life. But the win might be, I really want to keep doing this, but I don't know how to anymore, and I need help. And so you're kind of creating, I guess, again from the outside looking in, this space where we can, it's an amalgamation of ideas. It's not a directorial, this is our way and that's it.
Exactly that, and that's a really interesting point as well, because with other investments,
sometimes do make them.
Sometimes. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I think when we sit down and people say, "So, what's your model? How do you, do you have to have 100% acquisition, or can you invest, or do you have to rip out the management team, or do you have to send?" I always say we don't have any. Because I'm not clever enough to come up with one, I think, but we don't have any set way of doing it. We're really looking, and we've proved this already with a few bits and bobs we've done, and the next bits and bobs we do will prove it even more. We are willing to work in whatever way we think is best for that model, because some businesses don't need to grow to 20 sites. Some only need to get to 8 or 10. That's probably their optimum amount that they need to get to. So there's not like we have to grow it. We have to do 5 openings a year of this concept, otherwise the algorithm doesn't work. That's not right for some businesses. Some it is. Some need to do 25 sites a year, but that's fine. I think it's about finding out what the kind of the core, the essence of these businesses is, and maximizing that. Well, I had breakfast the other week with a brilliant operator, absolutely brilliant guy. And he's been running his businesses for 15 years, about 15 years. And he's grown it to 3 sites. And he's a bit fed up because he knows that with external help and investment, he could do openings quicker. I mean, again, not trying to get to 25 sites, probably trying to get to 10 sites. But doing it on his own, he can only afford to do 1 site every 5 years. Yeah. So he's not going to get to 10 sites because it will be too old and the business would have probably gone out of fashion by then. So there's businesses like that who just need that little push, that little bit of rocket fuel in them. And sometimes that's money, sometimes that's skill, sometimes that's a bit of both. But I think that's where, if Hestia has a sweet spot, that's where it is.
Well, yeah, and also I think given your history, because you also still have your head involved in salt, if I'm correct.
Yep.
And also Adamo. How do you
No, I stepped down from that one, so I'm no longer chairing that one. Yeah, I stepped down about 2 years ago.
Okay,
from that
good research, Phil. Good research.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Listen, I don't think my missus quite knows exactly what I do, so that's fine.
But I suppose you come at this as well with a long career. And sorry, I'll say a career, not a long career, where you've been doing a lot of. You talk about, obviously one element is financial investment, if that's what's needed and necessary, but the other part is skill. And the thing is that you have been doing the skill element for a number of years as well. So I suppose that feeds into that unique proposition, is that's also something that we can help with.
Yes, exactly that. And my opening line to people is, I've made all of the mistakes so you don't have to.
Sold, you're in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All those expensive mistakes, I've done them all. So, part of what we bring is that really is you don't have to go through that pain because I went through it for you.
Yeah. No, I love it though. I mean, and there's a couple of things that I want to explore around this because like one, it's fine to have an idea and a strong idea, but then how do you bring it through to fruition is one thing. But the other thing is, I see a PLC on the end of the name here.
Yeah, so there's a story there. So, and actually, it's a story that's changed in the last few weeks, probably even since we agreed to do this. So I was kicking this idea around of Hestia, what became Hestia. And I phoned a few people who are much cleverer than me and said, how do I, like you said, it's all very well having an idea. How the hell do you go about doing it? And I'd known for a few years a chap called Justin King, who's ex-CEO of Sainsbury's and now on the board for M&S, and actually he's now chair of the company who's about to run the National Lottery. So he's an amazing businessman. He's always been very, very kind and generous with his time and his advice. So I phoned him. And he said, well, you should probably IPO this. That's the way to do this. I was like, well, okay, I vaguely know what that means, but I've absolutely no idea. And obviously, he's been on more PLC.
That's a type of beer, isn't it? An IPO?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Indian Pale Ale. So we chatted through that, and we thought this was a really good way of doing it. So we started down. We spent basically the best part of 2 years and the best part of £500,000 on trying to get this over the line as an IPO. With every bank in London going, we love it, we love the board you've built, we love the concept, but the market's broken and we can't do it.
I was just going to say, there's a but coming at the end of that.
Yeah, there definitely was always that. Yeah. And then we got to the point of, I think we actually got to the point of very nearly having an actual listing date where we're going to go and ring the bell at the stock exchange. And then, as you might remember, Liz Truss did a mini budget that turned out not to be that mini and absolutely break everything.
I've tried to eradicate that from my brain, but thanks for triggering me again. But
no, I've got that date tattooed on my arse somewhere, I think. That was bloody painful. That so we had no public markets of which to speak. And listen, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I now recraft that story. Your listeners must never retell this, but I now tell everyone that it was absolutely deliberate that we didn't end up IPOing, because actually this was the best route for us in the end. At the time, I thought we'd broken the whole thing and we were never going to get this off the line.
Right.
So I took my board out for a very boozy lunch last Christmas, actually, so almost a year ago, and told them that the definition of madness was trying to do the same thing and expecting a different outcome. And that's what we've been doing for 2 years. We kept meeting a new bank who thought they could get us to market on the public markets, spending 6 months and a whole load of money and resource on it, and then them going, oh, actually, we can't. So we were doing that on repeat. And I said to them, listen, give me 6 months of 2024 to try and do this privately and see if we can. And that's what we did. And we kissed a lot of frogs on the way. And eventually we got the first commitment of funding in about April or May this year. So we did it in the end. So going back to your line about, persistence and, you just have to keep going slightly.
Yeah, there's I can't remember what the phrase is, but there's this principle of like when you kind of go all in on something, you've kind of just got, even when you get to the point where you go, this is not really working, but we've just got to bloody do this now.
Yeah. Yeah, pig-headedness, I think it's called. The theory of pig-headedness.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
5-star hospitality means having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud is the online platform that makes planning rotas, recording attendance, and managing annual leave easy. Its simple, drag-and-drop interface lets you create and share rotas with your team in minutes, while our built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. RotaCloud also makes life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request time off, and pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be.
But this must be I suppose, a new experience for you as well, in terms of taking a company into a PLC, which I'd imagine requires a whole different skill set from the norm.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a fascinating journey, and I love sort of continuous learning, and I've learned so many things that I didn't know existed. Lots of people warned me off the PLC route, and in fact, as I say, we've gone down the private route in the end. So we're not a listed company as we sit here today. Not saying we won't be at some point, but we're not at the moment. But I've learned so much about that world, and there's a lot of dark arts in that world. My favourite story, on just to put anyone off ever doing a PLC, I said to our accountants right at the very start of it, I've got lots of things that could put people off being a PLC, but I said to our accountants, we hadn't even opened the company bank account at this point. This was still an idea. I said, I need a balance sheet for the PLC to start the process. So it was going to be a zero balance sheet. The company had no assets. It'd never taken £1 in. It had never spent £1 on anything. It didn't even have a bank account. And I said, we need a balance sheet. So just a zero balance sheet. And they said, oh, right, yeah. Is this for the PLC? I said, yeah. They said, yeah, no problem. It's going to be £35,000 for the balance sheet. I said, no. I just need a balance sheet. Just a zero balance sheet, like a line of zeros in both columns. Yeah. £35,000. I said, what? And they said, well, it's a PLC, so our liability for a PLC is enormous. So to write the balance sheet, we need to cover our liability because it's a PLC. I spent £35,000 on a row of numbers, a row of zeros, not numbers, zeros.
I'm going to be sick.
I know. So that's one of the many reasons not to do a bloody PLC.
Yeah.
But listen, I've learned loads, and I've made more mistakes again. So if anyone does want to do a PLC again, I've made all your mistakes for you already, and can definitely help you with that.
Yeah, but that's the joy as well, though, right? Is that at least you have the gumption to kind of explore and go and see, and and if it doesn't work in the end, then that's fine.
Yeah.
We divert, and yeah,
exactly
so
that.
better to have loved and lost.
Yes,
to never have loved it. Not that you'd love a PLC or anything like that.
Not that you love a zero balance sheet.
No, indeed. Yeah. So basically, you start the business £35,000 in debt.
That's what it probably should have said. That thing minus 35 grand for bloody accountancy fees.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's tax deductible if there's no profit on the other side of the 35 grand, does it? So, Well, okay. So day number one, as in we have this business now and we're off and going. When was that? When was your kind of we're off and running? Let's go.
That's a good question. So we did it because I got bored of sort of waiting for the process of the PLC and the fundraise. We went and did a couple of small acquisitions prior to really having any firepower in us, but I wanted to be doing something. And these were smaller businesses that either I'd sat on the board for or that I knew very well anyway. So we took 3 businesses into Hestia at the middle of last year was the first one we took in, and middle of this year was the last one of those. Because I'd always wanted Hestia. So Hestia's mission, Hestia's purpose is to go and buy existing premium hospitality businesses. That's what it's meant to be doing. But I'd always said, and partly because my heart is always, as an entrepreneur and startup guy, I like building things. So I'd always wanted to have a sort of incubator pool within Hestia. Which we've now called Hestia Innovates. So that's for the sort of smaller businesses who are either startup-y or up and running, that we can help bring some of the Hestia firepower to. So it's not just the bigger groups that we're buying, it's some of the smaller businesses as well. So we took on 3 businesses that I absolutely love, who are smaller, not necessarily startups, but they're much, much smaller than the core Hestia proposition will be acquiring. So we started that about the middle of last year. And then, as I say, the first funding came in earlier this year, and we're on the second bigger, meaningful bit of funding now.
Right.
So that's what we're working on now.
Got you. So, what brands do you have at the moment? What are you working on?
So in that little pool, we've got
This is the exciting bit, the really exciting bit.
The exciting bit. They are the exciting bit as well. We've got Apoy, which is Budgie Montoya's Filipino brand.
Do you know, you were the person that introduced me to Budgie Montoya, and
was I?
Yeah, and I couldn't believe that there was somebody in the world that had that name. That was like
just the best, isn't it? Absolutely the best.
It's the best. But by God, can the boy cook?
Oh.
Yeah, I went to one. He did a
whiz.
pop-up. Oh God, I can't remember the name of the street. This is a byproduct of getting into my late 40s, I think. But and yeah, I mean, sat down for, I think it was a 5-course set lunch.
Yeah,
and just remember thinking, yeah, why
the
is this
flavour
a pop-up?
that man can put into food is exceptional. So that's really exciting. So we're actually, I don't think we've announced this yet, but we are opening some new sites with him. A number of new sites probably before the end of this year. So that's really exciting.
Right. Don't worry, this won't go out until November sometime anyway. So
fine. So we're opening 3 new sites with Budgie, and I love him, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful chef, and he's such a sort of gorgeous human as well. And he's a brilliant guy to work with. Yeah. So we did that one. We did Native. Native is Imogen and Ivan's business. They've had it about 10 years. They've been all over the place. They were lastly in Mayfair, at Brown's in Mayfair. And then we helped them find the most... I tell people this and everyone thinks I'm just bigging up my own places. I think it's the most beautiful restaurant on God's earth. It is just phenomenal. It's in the Worcestershire, Herefordshire borders. It's in a 14th century barn. And it is the pure essence of what those guys do. I mean, I also think it's the most sustainable restaurant in Britain. Everything is farm to table. The farm out the back of it, where we grow 99% of our product. The cows come from the field over the road for the beef. Man. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. Hyper sustainable. And I don't just mean sustainability is one of those words that people bash around when they recycle their glass or something. I mean, we are the first restaurant to have this Japanese fermenting compost system. Don't ask me too many technical questions because I can't do it. That composts meats and things, and it has a runoff that you can use in the farm. I mean, it's just phenomenal. What those guys and girls up there are doing is absolutely beautiful. It has 2 gorgeous bedrooms as well. So because it's in the middle of nowhere, you have to go and stay really. Right. So there's that one, and then we launched a coffee business called All Things Bloom, which is led by the brilliant Henry Ayres, who had founded Gentleman Baristas, who I've been a huge fanboy of for a long time. And what he doesn't know about coffee isn't worth knowing. And that's a fantastic business as well. So it's supplying lots of sort of high-end Michelin star restaurants with their coffee now. And it's now got a consumer route as well. So it's got a direct to consumer route.
Right. I shall look it up. I'm a bit of a coffeetionado. Is that
I shall send you a bag of something after this.
Done. God, it was almost worth doing this chat for that.
Exactly. There's an unwashed Ethiopian that my wife won't have in the house because she thinks it smells horrible, but I think it's delicious. It's funky. It's on the natural end of life. But
I never thought I'd be talking about unwashed Ethiopian.
Unwashed Ethiopian, just the beans.
Yeah. Indeed. Yes. And and home kitchen. Talk to me about that.
Home kitchen. I've been on for about 2 years now, maybe longer actually. So it's a wonderful, wonderful project. It's a charity project. So I'm a trustee. I don't get paid for that one. And it again was a COVID idea actually. So there's a place called the Soup Kitchen, which is a soup kitchen down on Tottenham Court Road that's been there for 40 odd years. And it feeds 250 people a day, every day, breakfast and lunch. and is run by the most amazing man called Alex Brown. And it's the first soup kitchen in the world to provide drop-in mental health services. It does a clothing bank to help clothe people. And it was one of only 5% of soup kitchens that stayed open all the way through COVID. So a phenomenal business, charity, absolutely mind-blowing. And I'd got to know them, and I'd gone down and volunteered and made things and served things and cups of tea and all the rest of it. And during COVID, well, I mean, we were talking about it, weren't we? That, you know, that first weekend where we all got told to shut. Well, no, on the Thursday, Boris said, no, don't shut. And then on the Saturday, he said, yeah, you have to shut. None of us quite knew what to do. And loads of chefs and restaurants very, very kindly said, we've got fridges and walk-in fridges and freezers full of food that we don't quite know what to do with. And we've got whole brigades that at the moment, we're not sure when we're going to reopen. Can we come down and help? Can we come and cook? So lovely Monica Galletti, who was around the corner on Charlotte Street with Mary at the time, brought her whole team down to make lasagnas one day. I mean, it was amazing. And lots of chefs very kindly donated time and people and food. Now, out of this, when we started again to come out of COVID, and there was that staffing crisis, we had about in our sector, we had about 170,000 vacancies in hospitality that we couldn't fill. And there at the time, there were about 170,000 people. These are give or take figures, who were either homeless or what we call housing insecure. So they might not necessarily have been sleeping under Waterloo Bridge, but they didn't necessarily know where they were going to be tonight. So that might mean sofa surfing, that might mean hostels, right. That might mean a number of things. So those numbers really resonated because they were sort of the same. I was like, we've got a bucket load of jobs we can't fill, and we've got loads of people who can't get a job for love nor money. There's an awful statistic that Shelter produced. There was 62% of UK bosses would fire an existing employee if they became homeless.
You are what?
Yeah.
What?
One of the most awful statistics I've ever read.
Horrific. Yeah.
So that's an existing employee. That's me or you. If we became home, our boss might fire us. If you then extrapolate that into the chance then of a homeless person getting a job, I mean, no chance. Absolutely no chance.
Yeah.
So we kicked around this idea, and then the brilliant Adam Simmons, Chef Adam Simmons, said he really wanted to get involved. He really wanted to get involved for a couple of reasons. One, because this was meaningful to him. But two, when he won his second Michelin star, and he's been very open and talked about this, he was effectively homeless. He was an addict. So he was a second Michelin star addict, but he was an addict. Wasn't sure where he was going to stay. You know, it was only his family taking him back in that actually meant that he wasn't properly homeless. So he had that kind of there by the grace of God that, you know, that could have been me kind of story. So we came up with an idea that we would give these guys and girls a chance, and we would help train them into hospitality. And it took a long time. We had to build the back end of this, and that took a long time because we knew what we didn't know. We knew we didn't have experience of case managing people, vulnerable people. So we partnered with Shelter and Beam and Only a Pavement Away and various other charities who are expert at this. And all of that has culminated in about 6 weeks ago, us opening Home Kitchen in Primrose Hill.
Look at the smile on your face.
I love it. I just love it. And it is a fine dining restaurant staffed exclusively, other than the head chef and the sous chef and the general manager and the assistant general manager, by homeless people, by people who have been affected by homelessness. And we've put them all through a basic training program with our partners at Beyond Food. When they've been with us for 3 months, we will pay for them to go to Westminster Kingsway College to do their catering course. We pay the London living wage. We give them travel cards, and we help them with things like housing and banks and, you know, finance management and all of that, those kind of things. And I have never blubbed so much as I have in the last 3 months of doing this project. I keep coming back just absolutely in bits. And I don't mind admitting that on a podcast or anywhere else.
Yeah.
Because it has been the most amazing journey, seeing these guys open a fine dining restaurant. This is proper food. This is, you know, we've got a mackerel ceviche as the starter at the moment and a beautiful lemon tart. And, you know, they're learning incredible skills, front and back of house. And the idea is they'll be with us for a period of time, and then we'll help place them into the wider hospitality industry for jobs.
That's brilliant. And I mean, like, how many itches are you scratching with this idea as well? Like,
it's an interesting one, that. So I think for me personally, it's been, as I say, I sort of I sort of thought, well, I can help add some of the restaurantness to the whole thing. I can help them, with supply chain and property and all the rest of it. And actually, I've become much, much more involved. So for me personally, it's a lot of itches are being scratched by this because it feels incredibly meaningful because it is life changing, and that's not just blowing our trumpet. These people who are working for us, their lives have been and hopefully will continue to be changed by what we're doing on this project.
Yeah, but shouldn't that be, I suppose, in the end, I know that it's way easier to say this than do this, but what business should be, right? It should be good
Yeah,
for the soul. It should be
exactly.
not just your soul, but the soul of everyone else that it touches.
Yeah, and I think, you alluded to being in your late 40s, as I am now. I think the older we get and the grumpier we get about just the meaninglessness of the other stuff, the more this stuff actually matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I could not agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So it's been a wonderful project, an absolutely wonderful project.
No, I'm just in awe of how busy you keep yourself. We'll have a chat again in a year's time, and there'll be 3 other things that are
This
on the
3.0. No, I think your listeners will get sick of it at some point.
But I think actually what you make a really good point, and maybe your enthusiasm and just your complete and utter focus on all things amazing in this industry are also to do with your desire for continuous learning. So you're also kind of like, oh, you're almost a shiny new thing guy. What's that thing?
I am a slight magpie, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm trying to be less of that because I think focus is really important. But the learning part of it, yeah. I graduated this summer, actually. I did my MBA finally.
Yeah, I saw that you were MBA.
Yeah, so I got to put on a gown and go to Warwick University Business School for my graduation, which felt very nice.
Yeah,
but I love that. I love. Actually, my missus has just started her doctorate, so we're a pair of us.
So you're basically competing with each other for.
Yeah. I got a master's, so she has to get a doctorate, so she'll end up
professorship for you. The other thing I made a note of was freedom of the City of London.
Yeah,
is now yours.
That's nice. Actually,
how the hell does that come about?
I appreciate your listeners can't see, but that's my lovely certificate there. With,
very good.
Freedom. That was lovely. I can tell you exactly when it was because it said it on the certificate. 2nd of September, 22. Yeah, 22. That was lovely. Really, what an honour. I mean, absolutely brilliant.
I assume somebody must put you forward for that. Is that how? I don't know how these things works.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Someone put me forward for it, and it was for contribution to business and the arts, which was very nice. And you get to go to Guildhall and have this ceremony, and they said you can bring your family. And actually, the kids were off school before they started back at school. So I said to MJ and the kids, "Do you want to come to this?" I said, "I'm not sure. I don't know if there's like 10 of us getting it at the same time, or I don't know if it's just you walk up and shake someone's hand and get a certificate. I've no idea." And you go and you get ushered into the court in the Guildhall, and the alderman, or the lady in my case, does this whole ceremony. It's just you, and she takes you through the whole history of the ceremony of the freedom of the City of London, and then she spent so much time with the kids showing them. Because back in the old days, they used to get given in a box or a ceremony if you were important enough. So she showed them Winston Churchill's freedom and Florence Nightingale's freedom. And it was just amazing. And the kids thought it was brilliant. I thought it was just wonderful. So it was a really, I just thought it was a real honour. A city I wasn't born in, but have loved for more of my years than I've not loved it. To be given that honour. And it comes with a couple of perks. One of them I managed to do a couple of weeks ago, which is I drove my sheep. They definitely weren't my sheep. I don't own any sheep. I wouldn't know what to do with a sheep. I drove them across the bridges, which is one of my old rights. Allegedly, if I'm found drunk within the square mile, which has never happened, by the way, no. The city police are meant to take you home for free. Now, I'm definitely not going to try that one because I think they'd say, bugger off, get an Uber.
Yeah.
And the third one I'm allowed to do is I'm allowed to carry my sword unsheathed through the city. But given my wife is CEO of an anti-knife crime charity, I shall not be doing that because that is not a good look to be carrying knives around the
city. Yeah. God, can you imagine like just walking around with an unsheathed sword?
Unsheathed sword, saying it's my right. I think you get
Yes,
rightfully so.
I think that's your right is also to get tasered in that
Yeah,
moment.
exactly that. But it has been, I've got really involved in the livery companies and city life, and it's just one of the it's the largest charity giving organisations in Britain. It's the City Liveries. They give more money than any other group of organisations every single year, and they raise phenomenal amounts of money for a whole widespread of charities. And it seems very, I mean, it is very, old school, and lots of people wearing red cloaks and silly hats with feathers on and things. But it's also a really meaningful, very relevant set of organisations. So I've really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yeah. Describe how did the sheep thing come about?
They do it. So it's as I say, it's the right of a freeman of the city. But actually, what they do is the woolmen of the city organise one day a year where they close. We were on Southwark Bridge actually, where they close the bridge every year and organise this, and you raise money for charity by doing it. So
Right.
So people who know more about sheep actually help you walk across a little bit of it.
Right. Well, and who knew?
Damien Lewis did it this year. He was leading us out.
Right. Very good.
He got his freedom, and he drove his sheep with us.
I bet you didn't know that was a life goal, did you?
I definitely didn't know that was a life goal. Yeah, if you said 18-year-old me, that's what you're going to end up doing, I think I'd have told you to go away.
Isn't that the joy though of like you're just exploring life and like
Yeah.
and doing something that makes you happy, and because what you do obviously does make you happy, because you are one of the happiest people that I think I've ever had on this podcast.
Ask me again at 3:00 and I'll see if that's true.
Yeah. Maybe it's just for camera and just for microphones.
Miserable bastard the rest of the time.
But I mean, you are kind of a walking, I suppose, proof really of like just pursue the stuff that makes you happy, and in the end, all this amazing other stuff can just come your way. I know it can come your way. You're working for it, but
no, but I think come your way. I mean, anyone says what's the is there a key to this sort of any success at all, and I always say the only answer is luck. Anyone that tells you anything other than luck, now listen, you can create your own luck by hard work, but it comes down to luck in the end. And I think you're right. If you and I are sat here talking about the industry we love, talking about the things we love, we're very, very lucky people. There's not many people in the world as a percentage who get to do what they love. So we are very lucky, and long may that continue.
Yeah. That sounds like a wonderfully positive way to wrap things up. Although I should ask you, what's next? At the moment, as we sit here today, because I'm sure I'd ask you this in a week's time, it would be different. But what's coming down?
No, I think I'm going to try and not be too much of a magpie. So I think we're working on some really nice big acquisitions for Hestia, and that's taking most of my time at the moment. So that's brilliant. Home Kitchen's only just launched, and I'm loving it, and the response has been amazing. And if you subscribe to this podcast, you have to come. It's a fact. You now have to come to Home Kitchen. Salt, which we didn't really talk about. But those boys and girls are going from strength to strength, doing some really, really brilliant work. And I spent some time with them yesterday afternoon and evening. We did a brilliant event at A Wong's last night that was amazing.
Oh, that's the number one restaurant on my list.
Oh, so we've got this series we've been working on with a partner called Sarah, who are a sort of food events thing, and it's called If I Hadda. So we've asked amazing chefs what. If they didn't run their posh restaurants that they currently run, what would they run? So Tom Brown did If I Had a Pub, and we took over a pub in Marylebone for a night, and he did Scotch eggs and sausage rolls and things, but he did them his way. So hake, Scotch egg, and just amazing.
They would have been really shabby, I'm sure.
Callum Franklin and Ivan from Native did If I Had a Pie Shop, and they took over Mansey's Pie Shop in South London,
right,
and did pie and mash. But again, it was Callum and Ivan's pie and mash. And last night we did, at Andrew Wong's, we did If I Had a Hong Kong Cafe, where we took over the restaurant downstairs and did a sort of speakeasy Hong Kong cafe with him doing wonton snacks and things like that.
Man.
It's just so much fun, that thing. It's just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, you've got to get me on your mail list.
What's that?
Get me on your mail list.
Yeah. You definitely need to come to one of those. I'll get you down to one of those. Actually, Tom Bouton is doing the next one at the Dorchester, which If I Had a Toby Carvery. So he's doing a Sunday roast, but where you get to go up and pick what meats you want, but it's at the Dorchester and it's Tom cooking. So, that's going to be brilliant.
Oh, that's wicked. Yeah, super.
So that's it for the moment. That's all I'm doing.
Is that it? Oh, okay.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, and obviously what's coming with Budgie and all of that.
Yeah. Apart from opening lots of new sites and things.
Yeah. Wicked. Look, always a pleasure to catch up.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It means a lot.
Total pleasure. And wish you guys all the best with the next phase. I just, your positivity for this industry is unbelievably infectious. And I wish you could just go and infect everyone with this. Because, this is I've believed that what you hear and see in the world is not the reality a lot of the times. And so actually, to speak to somebody like you who is really at the kind of the sharp end of what's possible with, drive, positivity, and a bit of luck, as you say, we need more of that. We need more of that. And as positive people, have got to stick together and change the narrative.
We've got to try, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Good man.
Thank you, sir. Thanks
so much. Cheers. And there we have it. What a total joy it was to welcome Andrew back, and I hope you can all agree we need more people like him flying the flag for the industry. That's 2025 off and running, and I'll be back next week with another cracking story from hospitality. So until then, have a great week, and I'll see you then.